Here's the commissioner from yesterday talking about something that is not a hot topic for fans and players and teams and coaches, but it's a very hot topic for 345 Park Avenue, the hip drop tackle. They want it out of the game, and they're willing to say so during a season. They want it out of the game. Here's Commissioner Roger Goodell from yesterday on the issue of the hip drop tackle.
Hip drop, I would tell you, I think we all should work to get that out of the game. You see it escalated in the number of times it occurred this season. The injury can be very devastating. We saw that also. It's not just happening at the NFL level, it's happening at other levels. It's something that I feel we've got to work very hard to get that removed this spring.
And, okay, fine. Why would they talk about it now when there's no process in place for changing it now? This is just, I think, an example of the arm twisting that happens to pressure the owners to go along with what the league office wants.
Yeah,
they're making this public PR case. It's like a political thing.
Yeah, they're getting out in front of it.
There's some bill that somebody wants to be passed.
Right.
They want to create an expectation and a groundswell against the hip drop tackle.
Right.
And now we all have the opportunity to watch the rest of the season and see how many more of these things happen.
Right.
We just saw one, sort of. It was a combination horse collar hip drop on Monday night that happened to Tyreek Hill, and now the Dolphins may not have him for this weekend against the Jets. He didn't practice on Wednesday, although they didn't have a practice. If they would have practiced, he wouldn't have practiced. It's one of those
Here's another hip drop.
Did not practice thing. This is the Mark Andrews likely out for the year. So the NFL
very much like the Tyreek
determined.
Hill one, just not the same as the far in the back, the hand in the back of the nameplate, but a very similar tackle of just hanging on and then throwing all your body weight and just letting your body go limp as you hang on with your hands and drop your hips on people's knees, legs, ankles. Broken leg, broken ankle Mark Andrews, broken ankle Tony Pollard, broken ankle Dak Prescott, right? I mean, I think we could like literally continue to go on and on if we put our heads around this and like had a little group think session over the last few years of people who have serious injuries from this tackle. So, good for the NFL to get out in front of it. Sorry to bust in there. Just the highlights started playing, and I feel like we can talk about it.
I got no problem with that. We do that all the time. I interrupt you, you interrupt me. It's all family here. We've been doing it for this long, and we haven't killed each other. So, it's all good. It's strange that it hasn't become an issue until recently. I don't know if it's a technique that defenders have just kind of naturally noticed. Like you watch a game, you see somebody do it. Hey, I'll do that.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're affirmatively teaching this. They
Right.
don't have a hip drop tackle seminar where, hey, you know what? Here's a way to get the guy on the ground, and if you get lucky, maybe you'll break his ankle. That's not what's happening here. It just kind of happened. It just kind of organically occurred. Now, the horse collar tackle, I think, was something that Roy Williams decided,
right.
Hey, I'll make this work.
Yeah.
I just said, hey, you know what? I found something here. I'll grab you by the back of the shirt. I'll pull you down. And by pulling you down, the weight of your body onto your lower legs and the way it's all just kind of awkward, it results in potentially serious lower leg injuries like the one that broke Terrell Owens' ankle late in the 2004 season, and he somehow was able to come back and play in the Super Bowl that year. We don't want stories like that. We want guys to be healthy. They've discovered this thing that is a dangerous technique. Now, I'll admit, when it all first came up and you hear defensive players push back against it.
Right.
And I go back to week 4, Monday night game, Giants, Seahawks. Remember along the sideline, Xavier McKinney did the hip drop sort of to Geno Smith.
Yeah.
And Geno Smith was out for a while, came back.
Got
and
mad,
said
kind of got a
game,
penalty.
He was mad. He was talking to Lisa Salters. Right. He got a penalty during the game, and he was talking to Lisa Salters after the game. They got to do something about this. They got to find this guy. Pete Carroll chimed in with the same thing. I interviewed Bobby Wagner not long after that. He's like, what? No. It's hard enough to play defense. What are you talking about? Keep that in the game. That's the push and pull here. The defensive players don't want what they regard as one of the last remaining arrows in their quiver taken away.
Yeah, that is right. And I think a lot of them, to your point, it's not taught. It's not talked about. This is not a thing that is like put on the board. We show video. Hey, try to do this, right? It's a desperation thing. It is, I think, like you see, it's Tyreek Hill. I'm hanging on for dear life. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hang on much longer. I'm just going to drop all my weight and do it. I just got to get him down. That's my job, get him down. I'm not mad at defensive players for doing it. If I was on defense, I'd probably be doing it as well. But the bottom line is it's become the most dangerous action in the game right now. Or it's right up there with them. And I don't think a lot of defensive players, and listen, you know me, I got compassion for the defensive side of the ball. If anything, I am more pro defense and stop skewing the rules to the offense. I think you could attest to that. So I want, the defense and the physicality and all of that. I think the protection of the quarterbacks become too much. So I'm in their corner with most arguments here. But this is one that I've seen enough evidence and enough plays now to go, no, this can be taught out of the game, and it's too dangerous. And I think more and more defensive players, like we had Devin McCourty, right? Where he early in the year was a little bit like, what are you guys talking about? What tackle? And then we showed him it, and he was like, no, I don't want that out of the game. He's like, how do you think I get down a bigger running back or a bigger tight end, right? But then here he was a few weeks later, and I think it was after the Baltimore Ravens game, he had, it had been put on his radar a little bit. He'd seen it around the league. He heard us talking about it on certain Sundays, and he kind of shook his head and was like, yeah, they probably got to get rid of that tackle. It's not good for the sport, right? And I think some defensive players are just kind of getting their head around this about what it exactly is and, that the danger and why it's going to be taken out of the game. And I think there's a little pushback right now because it's a little new to all of them right at this moment.
And I'm not faulting the natural inclination of defensive players who have seen their ability to be effective defensive players erode over the past 13 years, starting with this idea that you can't hit a player who has just caught a pass in the head or neck area with your helmet, and there's more changes that have been made, and there have been some changes put in place to protect defensive players, but it's easy for a defensive player to think what we do is under assault. It's hard enough to do what we're trying to do. Don't take away something else, even if it's something I've never used or never even heard of or couldn't demonstrate to you if you told me to. That's what J.J. Watt said yesterday on Pat McAfee's show. I couldn't show you the hip drop tackle if
that's what I mean.
A lot of guys that just have never seen it, don't know what it is. And this is part of what we're trying to do is educate people on what it is, and we'll do that in a second.
Right.
But yeah, it's and McCourty's former teammate, Ramondre Stevenson, another one of the guys, Chris,
there you go,
who suffered a serious ankle injury when he was dragged down with the hip drop technique, and right on cue. Well done, Kristen. There it is. Is that it? Is that where he gets dragged down? I think that is where he gets
right
dragged
here.
down. It happens so fast.
Right.
It happens so fast sometimes. But see, there is a rhythm to it. You get to the point where you know it when you see it.
Exactly.
You grab the guy, you spin him, and you fall down.
Yeah.
That's the way to get him on the ground. You get control. You get your arms around him, and then you fall.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You bear hug, you hold on for dear life, and you just let your body weight go down from there. And with your momentum and coming into that, the ball carrier can't do anything. Let alone now he's been bear hugged and has weight on him, and his legs are in the ground to begin with. And again, it's field turf, and it's not that easy to get your cleats out of that field turf all the time either, or grass for that matter, but even harder with field turf. To now you're stuck up top, and now you're being put in a position, and you can't get your legs out from underneath you quickly enough to avoid, oh no, my leg's stuck in the ground now. And now I've got somebody else that's going to fall on my leg and be put in a compromised position. And that's where we're seeing the high ankle sprains, the broken fibula, tibia, right? The ACLs, all of that. That's what's causing these injuries. And yeah, it's definitely got to go. And, hopefully we can get more defensive players aware of it and realize that it's something that's got to be taught out of the game, and we don't need it.
And before we go any farther, I do want to mention one thing. At the risk of sounding like we're wearing a groove in our own back, those of you who watch this show every day or listen to it aren't surprised by this because we told you not that long ago. Remember, there was the report that Roger Goodell wants to ban the tush push permanently from the game, and I started looking into it, and I found out he hasn't taken an opinion on it. He hasn't expressed an opinion on it.
Right.
And as I was inquiring about that, I was affirmatively told the hip drop tackle's got to go.
Yeah.
And I vaguely recall we talked about it last week and we said hey, folks, it's coming. They're going to get rid of the hip drop tackle. And yesterday, I think, was the first official formal step toward getting at least 24 owners in March, 3 months from now, to say no more hip drop tackle. Coming out publicly about it is just part of this effort to push and push. And I guarantee you there will be arm twisting between now and late March by the league office. And I think what they're trying to do is make such a big push against it, they don't need to twist arms. They get everybody on board. They get us on board. They get us understanding it. They get you understanding it as viewers and listeners and fans of the game. And they get, maybe some voices out there in the media who don't quite understand it yet, sensitive to it. Here's what Troy Vincent said yesterday. He's the Executive VP of Football Operations with the NFL. He's had that job for a long time now. I think we have to ban it now, he said. I think a year ago when we actually drew the hip drop or a version of the tackle that we were seeing on video, there were some clubs that had no clue what we were talking about. One thing we can do today is define what that is. It is to grip, to rotate, and drop. Those three things show up on that play, and it's a gruesome play. That's a direct quote from Troy Vincent, Executive VP of Football Operations, who's, along with the commissioner, leading the charge to get rid of the hip drop tackle. And, this is encouraging to me because we say from time to time, if not all the time, the league is too reactive. The league isn't proactive. And I got to give them credit here
agreed.
For spotting this and saying, wait a minute, what's this new trend? What's this new dance the kids are doing?
Yeah.
Right. What's going on here? Let's figure this out because there's something about this that isn't good. And they've been able to identify it, articulate what it is, and begin this aggressive effort to get rid of it. So this isn't BS. I mean, for all the times we criticize the league office where they're off base, this is one where they're plowing the right ground to say, we're seeing something that isn't safe. We got to get rid of it. And here it is. And they've embarked on the effort to do so.
No, it is. They do seem like they're in front of this conversation, right? I mean, so much so that some defensive players are like, what? The hip drop tackle, right? It hasn't become really a public talking point or knowledge point quite yet. Troy Vincent, that crew there, hey, the one thing I don't doubt is they care about players. We know that, right? We're in a meeting with them every year in the summer, and there's real care for players. They're seeing people go down left and right here, because of this injury. And not like these are career-defining injuries. I mean, you dislocate your ankle, break your ankle like Dak Prescott did. I mean, Dak Prescott, I would argue that this year is the first year he's moving the same way he did before the injury. This is 2.5 years later, everybody. So it's serious, let alone, again, yes, I feel for defenders and I know they want to get people down. The other problem is you've heard me say, and why I think it's become more popular too and more of a technique is because of the gloves. Nobody falls off defenders anymore. So they just go, wait, I'm latched on. I'm like Spider-Man. I ain't going anywhere. Let me just drop my weight and take them down. But it's hurting our sport. That's the bottom line, and that's why we got to get it fixed. I already named a few people we're talking about, right? We've shown a few highlights. Mahomes in the AFC divisional game last year against the Jaguars, that was a hip drop-ish tackle, right? Here you go. I mean, it's going to be the same kind of thing here. Arden King latches on, brings body weight down. He kind of like caught himself halfway, but it was hip drop-ish. It was hold on, let my body weight go down, except he just didn't swing his legs through. And I think we have one other, so here he is. Let me just hold on and just bring my weight down. He was in a little bit of a different angle, but still, I think everybody out there gets the gist of that. So there, I mean,
Chris, I first became aware of it when it happened to Tony Pollard.
That's where I was going to go next.
I didn't even know what it was.
Right.
I went through the same thing. Like, what is this hip drop tackle? I don't know it. I've never seen it.
Right.
I don't. Tell me more, please. But Tony Pollard broke his ankle just on the cusp of free agency, and the Cowboys ended up applying the franchise tag somewhat surprisingly because he goes into the offseason just weeks away from free agency with a broken ankle that he suffered after he was tackled that way by the 49ers. And again, it's nothing that any team, as far as we know, and I've seen no evidence to suggest this, that any team is coaching it, but it's happening because it is effective. And I think back to Mark Bavaro, who played with your dad in the 80s. If you get a guy around the waist and you're holding on, he's going to Mark Bavaro you down the field. The players these days are strong enough to drag you with him. this is the way to get him to the ground. Once you
Exactly.
have him around the waist, the only way you're going to get him down is to just fall down.
Fall on his
fall
legs.
down and pull him with you
Right.
and land on his legs.
Right.
He lands on his legs, or you land on his legs, or both.
Yes.
And that's what they're trying to identify. And now, look, when we were going through the mental gymnastics of accepting this as something that needs to be out of the game, how do you get a guy on the ground? Peter King and I discussed this after the Mark Andrews injury on a Friday edition of PFT Live, especially if guy is moving toward the line to gain or the goal line, like Mark Andrews was, and you're coming in as Logan Wilson was from the Bengals behind him. How do you get him to the ground ASAFP?
Yeah, I hear
before
you.
the ball gets to where it's trying to go. Well, I don't know, but you don't do it by grabbing him around the waist and falling down on his legs. That's going to be taken out of the arsenal. You're going to have to find another way to get him on the ground, or you're just going to have to concede that territory at that point. I've seen other things like the rugby roll, like a gator roll.
That's what I was. That's how people used to do it. Right. Same thing. Instead of grabbing the waist, and we can go back to the Logan Wilson play here in a second, guys, against Mark Andrews. Instead of grabbing the waist and then pulling your whole body and dropping your weight, just go and now hold on and bring him with you as you're going by. I think that's how tackles like that were traditionally made in the past. And I think that's what you're referring to here now. Go by, hold on, and as you're going that way, your momentum and everything, you just take him with you almost in a gator roll. That was like a good way to say that. And I think that's where it's changed. Logan Wilson, and because of the gloves and all that, he grabs him by the waist, basically does a pull-up with his whole body and swings his legs through and then drops his butt on the ankles of the guy. I mean, again, look at this. He's holding onto a human, and he pulled his legs all the way through to the other side and then dropped his butt on Mark Andrews' ankle, which is now broken because of it. So that's where I think you're talking about, and maybe next week we could show examples of a play that has the gator roll there instead of what we're seeing there, which is extremely dangerous in football right now.
You did something there as you were demonstrating, and I know that it's a very hard concrete floor, and I don't want you to get injured, but part of me was kind of hoping you would just completely fall off the chair and disappear from the screen, because I know how those chairs are, and you're taking a risk. I don't want you to do it again.
Yeah.
But you spun a certain way, and I thought we're going to have a little bit of a viral moment today because Chris is going to fall off that chair if he goes a little bit farther, especially when you're as top-heavy as you are thanks to that giant bucket you have on top of your shoulders.
Thank you.
You made me nervous, but also it was a little bit of a thrill.
Oh, yeah,
It's
right.
kind
A
of
little thrill. Like when I
coaster.
fell off a stage at the Super Bowl. Like you were nervous for a second, but then
I
you
don't
were
know
like,
anything
this is
about that.
awesome. That dumb fool fell on the ground.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.